Alhamdulillah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Once again, brothers and sisters, peace and blessings upon everybody who's watching around the world. We've got so many people already in the chat and so many likes. I really appreciate that. Also, I just want to mention that this channel is linked with our brother from Yusuf Ismail from the South African Debate Initiative. So guys, please go onto that channel and like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. But guys, one thing I really want to emphasize to you all who will be watching this, in the future, is to share the stream. The voice of the oppressed is not being heard. We need to make more awareness of this channel and these streams because it will help the people, especially the mankind, to unite with each other. It doesn't matter what faith you come from or what religious belief you come from. Justice is justice and truthfulness is truth. And we need to work together, link together and work together for the common goal. I really appreciate that. If you can please share the stream onto your friends, onto social media, so we get more views on this particular topic. So as you can see, we've got brother Yusuf joining us, and I'm going to pass the mic on to our beloved brother Yusuf all the way in South Africa. Brother Yusuf, go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, Brother Mohammed. Assalamu alaikum and shalom alaikum to those out there who are Jewish, and certainly to the good Rabbi. Well, on Sunday, we had Professor Norman Finkelstein with us as a guest, joining us both on the Covff FF channel as well as the South African Debate Initiative, which I urge you to subscribe. And today we've got another special guest by the name of Rabbi Dovid Feldman. Rabbi may not remember, but both him and I met in 2009 when he was down with Rabbi Yisrael Dovid Weiss of the Neturai Karta in South Africa, in Durban in 2009. And back then, there was an interesting discussion held at the then Islamic Propagation Center, the center of the late Ahmadiyya, called "Is Israel Set Up for Spiritual Destruction?" Just briefly to those out there, the Neturai Karta, otherwise known as the Guardians of the City, is a religious group that was founded in Jerusalem in 1938. And basically, it's an ultra-Orthodox, authentic Jewish group that essentially advocates that the state of Israel as it exists today, the secular state of Israel, is totally illegitimate, has no religious basis, and in fact, the existence of the so-called secular ethno-state, which euphemistically calls itself a Jewish state, is in fact a rebellion against God, as it did not occur with any kind of divine intervention through any Messiah. Well, joining us from New York City in a lovely park, I believe in New York, is indeed Rabbi Dovid Feldman. Rabbi, I would like to say good evening, but actually it's good afternoon, and shalom alaikum or salamu alaikum to you.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate yourself, Yusuf, and Brother Mohammed. And we hope that we can have a nice discussion and basically help the audience overcome this massive propaganda, which is unfortunately driving the minds of so many people in blindness to what is going on.
Well, thank you. I mean, we've seen so many things happening, but more particularly since you are in the midst of it, there's been a massive uprising by university students, by campus students, and we are seeing this kind of fascistic behavior from the feds, from the police, from the NYPD. We've seen these attacks on students at the universities. Just yesterday, about 2 or 3 days ago, at the University of Michigan, we had students being attacked with batons, with pepper spray. What's been the role of the Neturai Karta in these protests at Columbia University, and certainly in relation to the kind of hardline Orwellian crackdown that has been implemented by the state, calling these particular groups which are calling for peace as hate groups?
First of all, let me do this very small correction. I am presently in New Jersey, and basically, while I'm talking to you, I'm on my way to Princeton University in Princeton, New Jersey, joining a student rally for Palestine now while there's going to be a meeting, administration meeting regarding the demands of the students on the topic of divestment. Yes, we joined many activities outside of Columbia University in New York, many activities inside the encampment of City College of New York, and we joined so many other encampments in Canada and elsewhere. We admire the bravery of the students that stand up, as you mentioned, in this new strong wave to speak up against what is wrong, to speak up what is right, to speak up for the oppressed. And we say that the bravery of these students should be a lesson for the rest of the world to follow and to stand up to what is right. Unfortunately, this massive intimidation against the students, mainly based on this false accusation of anti-Semitism, saying that whoever speaks against Israel, whoever condemns the crimes of Israel, is in any way anti-Semitic. This is ridiculous. This has no grounds, doesn't make any sense. It's misleading and is dangerous. Because unfortunately...
Can I ask you one question on that, Rabbi? Is that I've seen these reports by people like Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden and a number of other individuals within the State Department, as well as the U.S. government, that have made the allegations that these are hate marches, that Jewish students and that Jews are in fear of these particular marches, and that these particular pro-Palestinian peace marches are indeed anti-Semitic and calling for the killing of Jews. You've been to these marches. Have you seen any of this? And if not, why such propaganda?
Okay, I have attended many of these marches with the students in relation to college campuses and in so many other pro-Palestinian demonstrations in New York, in the United States, in the world. And we do this already for decades. None of these activities have anything to do with anti-Semitism. And I always encourage people, and I ask people who approach me, and with this accusation that these activities are anti-Semitic, and I ask them, did you ever stop any of these demonstrators? Try to speak to them and find out what their point is and what they're promulgating for, what they're criticizing, what the whole issue is all about. And the answer is always no. They never approach these people. Now, one of these nice examples is the slogan which is being used from the river to the sea, Palestine should be free. Now, this supposedly is supposed to be like in the vision of pro-Israelis, that this is an anti-Semitic slogan looking for the annihilation of the Jewish people. This is totally false propaganda with no grounds to it. You just stop anyone in these rallies and ask them. All what this slogan is about the freedom of the oppressed people of Palestine. And contrary to some approaches that would be maybe willing to grant some rights to some oppressed people and come up with a two-state solution or whatever it might be, others disagree and demand and insist that all rights have to be restored to all oppressed people, which between me and you makes simple sense. Now, whether the individual agrees to this approach or prefers another approach, that's the choice of the individual. We can debate whether it is in accordance with full justice, but in any case, you cannot blame whoever disagrees as anti-Semitic. All they want total freedom. And I have to say that from the river to the sea, Palestine should be free. In other words, entire occupation should stop, and all Palestine should be restored to the Palestinian indigenous population. In no way means the annihilation of the Jewish people. It's not about the people, it's about the regime, it's about the oppression, it's about the occupation. Jewish people lived in Palestine before the 1920s. Yes, before 1948, there was already problems before the creation of the State of Israel, because Zionist provocations started way before they created the state. But before the 1920s, Jewish people lived in peace. Jewish people were protected and respected by the Muslim majority in Palestine. Now, there is no basis to say that Palestine has anything against the Jewish people. Yes, they are against the occupation. Yes, they are against a movement which was founded and is run, sadly, by some people from Jewish descent. But it doesn't make the movement Jewish, and it doesn't make the opposition to the movement anti-Jewish or anti-Semitic. The pro-Palestinian solidarity movement is against the occupation of Palestine, against the political state of Israel, which does not represent world Jewry. And this is a whole discussion for itself to understand how far away Zionism and the state of Israel is from the Jewish people.
I want to ask you one point on the protest, and then we're obviously going to move on to the substance of some of the other aspects of the discussion. Weeks ago at Columbia University, which is in fact the epicenter of the current movement, not too far away from where you're based, but President Minouche Shafik, in fact, called in the NYPD, which then arrested over 100 students. And we saw images, and then subsequently the same images were replicated at Berkeley, UCLA, where police came, they locked down the campus, and then mainstream media outlets like Fox News stated that the reason why the police were called in was that Jewish students and Jews in general feeling intimidated. Now, from your experience, you're Jewish, you're an ultra-Orthodox Jewish rabbi. Were these protests, did they have a large number of Jewish pro-Palestinian protesters within the actual movement itself? And why such heavy-handedness by some of the campus faculty, leaders, and indeed at Columbia, the actual president?
A very good point. Yes, there were many Jewish people in the pro-Palestinian solidarity activities, way more than before. In other words, recently it is growing enormously, the support of Jewish students or Jewish individuals for the Palestinian cause and against the crimes of Israel. But coming back to your point where the Jewish students on campus are being intimidated. Now, we have to be very clear. And I said this many times. I was asked what I have to say to those Jewish students complaining that they are threatened on college campuses. And what I said is as follows. If the individual insists to identify with the state of Israel, if the student insists on campus to raise an Israeli flag, they have to be willing to face the consequences. Obviously, naturally, some people will become upset. Now, this does not mean in any way that these students are threatened. I am not aware of any incident that a Zionist student would be threatened on college campuses. Yes, they might feel uncomfortable. They might face criticism to what they support. They might face opposition to the flag they're raising or the movement they are supporting. But listen, this is the price people naturally understand they have to pay for it. I say, on the other hand, that I disassociate myself from Israel, disassociate myself from the Israeli flag, and listen to this. I attend so many Palestinian conferences. I visit so many Muslim countries. I meet so many Arab governmental leaders or religious leaders, and nobody hates me. I have no problem, no intimidation at all. On the contrary, we as Jewish people face intimidation from the Zionist movement because of the stance of the peaceful and religious stance we take in opposition to the state of Israel.
You have been, and certainly in the Neturei Karta has always been for decades a proponent of peace and peaceful coexistence. And that's interesting that you say this, because at I think UCLA at Berkeley, it was the pro-Israeli students that had attacked the encampment. At the University of Michigan just 2 days ago, it was the pro-Israeli students who were given a free hand to attack the Palestinian encampment. And then you had the police called in and pepper spraying the actual protesters, and indeed using batons and assaulting them. So it's very much a kind of an inversion of reality, that the people who are calling for peace and an end to the genocide are being castigated and labeled as actually being haters, when in actual fact it's the opposite. I want to ask you, has the Netvrai Karta, because your voice is much needed, and when I see people like Dr. Phil McGraw and people like Rabbi Shmuley coming and being the so-called spokespeople for Judaism, it's really an aberration. Do you not have as significant a voice as a lot of these pro-Israeli Zionist propagandists? And what would you say is the Netvrai Karta's particular trajectory in terms of confronting and overcoming that challenge?
Well, those people have a voice, and they're using their voice, unfortunately, for evil. It was just, when was it, last week, when Rabbi Shmuley had a celebration for Israel on Israeli Independence Day in Times Square, and we were standing next to it on the sideline, and we protested it. Took him out of his mind, and he had to mention the Netvrai Karta a couple of times in his ceremony, because he was so upset. Which, this is exactly why we were there. We were there to make this statement and to have to set the record straight. And people should realize that those Zionist spokespeople are not the representation of all Jews. If some people insist to support Israel, that's the choice of the individual. Sadly, they're supporting the greatest violation, the greatest rebellion against God, the greatest violation of Judaism, and a terrible violation of basics of human rights and oppression of an entire people. But at least the world should be aware that there is a strong voice opposing it. There is a strong Jewish community worldwide who are so upset to all what Israel stands for and disassociate themselves and are embarrassed when Israel or their spokespeople insist to represent all Jews.
Would you be willing to debate him? Because Rabbi Weiss is quite a global presence himself, but people like Piers Morgan and all of that seem to be attracting some of the most vile, repulsive, pro-Zionist, and indeed in many instances bad representatives of Judaism to actually present a positive case for Israel. Shmuley being one of them, and then of course you've got a lot of these right-wing evangelicals that seem to be hogging the spotlight in a manner of speaking, but cool, calm, cogent, articulate voices of Judaism, Orthodox Judaism, like your group and like your members, are excluded by default.
Right. But all what we are doing is we are educating, we are helping the people overcome the propaganda, and at least people are aware that this is not Judaism, and this is not a representation of our religion or our people.
Fantastic. So let me get to the core of the issue here, is that, and there's different portions of it. I don't generally focus too much on the religious aspect pertaining in my discussions with Israelis. But as far as Jewish religious belief is concerned, that's, the core of our topic, where the Jews have a religious and moral right to a land called Israel. Jewish religious belief, as I understand it, defines the land or a land where Jewish religious law prevailed as being, something that was God-given. So if you look at, for example, in Genesis, Exodus, of course, Numbers and Deuteronomy, as well as later on in Joshua, as I understand it, there is this kind of, according to the book of Genesis as an example, as a starting point, where land was apparently first promised by God to Abraham's descendants. And the text is explicit that there was a covenant between God and Abraham for his descendants. Would I be correct, however, that is the ancient Israelites, and from a genetic point of view, they are different genetically and indeed linguistically from modern day Israelis?
Not necessarily. In other words, the Jewish people, as far as we are concerned, according to Judaism, the Jewish people today are the descendants of the Bnai Yisrael, of the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Jacob.
But that said, we still have to set the record straight, because just to clarify the issues here, to start, we have to understand, which is very basic, and this has to be like the foundation, the start to any conversation, to any religious conversation here. Judaism and Zionism are not the same. Judaism is a religion and a religion only, no politics to it, and no nationalism to it, versus Zionism, which is a purely political movement. There is no religion into it, and happens to be, according to the Jewish religion, is forbidden. But in order to be Jewish, we don't have a condition of having a nationalism. Like, for example, I am a Jew by the religion I follow, and at the same time, I'm an American by nationality. Now, there's no contradiction here, because Judaism, all what Judaism stands for is the religion. Now, I can be a citizen of whichever country. I can be an American citizen, I can be a Moroccan citizen, and I can be a Palestinian citizen. It doesn't affect my Jewishness whatsoever. Now, basically, what Zionism has done, it has transformed the basic definition of Judaism from a religion into a nationalism. Now, by doing that, they not only did so much harm to others, but they basically uprooted the essence of all what Judaism is. You would see today, you would find masses of Jewish people, unfortunately the majority of the Jewish people, that would have no connection with Judaism. They wouldn't follow any of the 10 commandments. And who speaks about the 613 commandments that every Jew should follow. And still they strongly believe that they are true Jews following Judaism. Why? Because they're good people and they support the state of Israel. Now, by supporting the nationalism, this is like the new definition of Judaism. And this is a real catastrophe for our religion. But if we go the next step to what you mentioned before about the Promised Land, the Promised Land is a true concept. But unfortunately, it's being misused in Zionist propaganda. Now, why do I say...
Okay, sorry, I don't want to interrupt you on that. Go ahead, I don't want to interrupt your train of thought.
Now, why do I say it's a true concept and still it's false propaganda? Because they only show you one side of the coin. They don't show you the other side of the coin. And again, what I'm presenting here is very, very basics of Judaism. No disagreements. This was accepted by all Jews throughout all generations, without any exception, until Zionism. Now, the land was promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and his children. But, and here's the but that nobody speaks about, it was given to the Jewish people on condition. There is a verse which we just read last week on Saturday. Every Saturday we read one portion of the Torah through the year. And last week was Parshas Kedoshim, and we read it's twice in Leviticus, twice the verse which says, "And the land should not reject you because you defile it." God placed the Jewish people in the Holy Land on condition that they keep themselves and the land on the level of holiness God requires of them. Otherwise, they would be expelled from the land. This condition was made in the first place several hundred years after the Jewish people were brought into the land. And by the way, according to Judaism, the Jewish people were brought into the land by miracles, by God, and not by their physical power. This is basics of Judaism. Now, several hundred years later, God warned the Jewish people through the prophets, you are not doing what you're supposed to. Unless you repent, you would be exiled from the land. Unfortunately, this is what happened, and Jewish people were driven in exile. The temple was destroyed by the hands of the Romans at the time, but again, according to basics of Jewish belief that was accepted by all Jews, that this was a divine decree. God's decree, the Jewish people are required to accept, whether it's comfortable or it isn't, and that we are forbidden to end this divinely decreed exile by any physical means. We are forbidden to fight other nations. We are forbidden to return back to the Holy Land in mass immigration. Individuals are allowed, but not in mass immigration. And we are forbidden to end exile by any physical means. What Jewish people are waiting for? Yeah, please go ahead.
So Rabbi, just on that point, again, I don't want to break your train of thought because you've got us, kind of a trajectory in terms of which you're putting it. As I understand, then your point is that at this particular point, at this juncture, from an Orthodox Jewish perspective, Jews are supposed to be in a state of exile. in an exilic state. In other words, the fact that the temple was destroyed by the Romans, and of course prior to that by the Babylonians, is that position has to basically exist until the reemergence of the Messiah. Would I be correct?
Correct. And this will only happen by God himself, without any human intervention, without any human power. Whatever is done by human power is haram, is non-kosher.
It's haram. So here's the thing. Now, it's already established that Zionism per se is a kind of a secular nationalist movement, and I think the kind of realization of the Zionist dream, particularly by people like Theodor Herzl in his book Der Judenstaat, a lot of the earlier Zionists, the earlier hardcore developers of the ideology of Zionism, it's now universally established that they were largely a-religious. They were not practicing Jews. A lot of them were atheists. I think Herzl himself was an atheist. Chaim Weizmann was not a practicing Jew. Netanyahu presently is not a practicing Jew. And in fact, surveys seem to suggest that many Israelis today are very secular in outlook and lifestyle. In fact, the largest gay pride parade festival in the world, one of the largest indeed, is indeed in Israel, in Tel Aviv. But here's the issue, is that despite that being the case, that this is largely a secular nationalist, indeed one may argue an atheistic movement, a lot of Jewish Zionists, and indeed a lot of evangelical Zionists, and indeed a lot of secular atheistic Zionists still variously make that claim, strangely enough, that and Netanyahu himself has seen this, and I've seen this in an interview, they make the claim that Israel, the state of Israel, the national state of Israel, has a title to the land by divine right or by a theological, historical, and a kind of a moral grounding of attachment to the land unique to Jews. And that idea is basically justified by means of invocation of the ancient religious text, whether it's a Talmud, whether it's the Old Testament, which you clearly pointed out is not justifiable. My point is, how does one explain this dichotomy, the dichotomy in the idea that it's a secular, fundamentally extremist, but predominantly atheistic Zionist ideological underpinning that is justifying its very existence by appealing to religion, when indeed it is an irreligious ideology? How does one explain this conundrum?
Now, this is a very strong point you're making, because what we are seeing is, and I say this all the time, we have a secular movement which doesn't even claim to be religious, and as you say, some will argue it's not only secular, it's heretical, and this is what we are saying. And this very same movement is misusing that religion that they choose not to follow, and they misuse it in order to justify this forbidden movement and this criminal movement. Now, this is a total hypocrisy, and I apologize for not being able to explain this, because there is no way to explain this. This is hypocrisy, and people should realize how hypocritical all of this is. If they choose to be secular, then let them come with some secular arguments. Let them come with some legal arguments. If they want to use religious arguments, then they have to follow the religion in its entirety, not pick and choose. And then we have to sit down and study what the religion teaches. Now, I have to add to what I said before, that in addition to this very basic violation of basics of Judaism that I mentioned before, all of this was wrong, and all of this was opposed by the Jewish leadership way before anyone imagined that this is going to affect human beings. Because originally this was supposed to be supposedly this land without a people, for the people without a land. It'll bring peace for everyone, helping the oppressed Jewish people. Everybody is going to be happy and is going to be peaceful with everyone. And even at that time, this was vehemently opposed by the vast majority, almost the entire Jewish leadership at the time. But it took some time to realize how criminal this is and how oppressive this is. And I always say, it's not only what was done to the Palestinian people is not only a blatant violation of international law, of basics of human rights. These are violations of Judaism, because killing and stealing, oppressing an entire people, all of this is not acceptable in Judaism whatsoever. Now, this is unacceptable. This is anti-Jewish, and we're just coming back to that very same point, that you're having a secular or a heretical movement misusing a religion to justify a movement which is so contrary, in whichever way you look on it. It is in total contrast to basics of Judaism.
So if for example that is the case, that is predominantly that Zionism as an ideology is dominated by forces of a secular, atheistic, nationalistic basis, then I mean this would be a classic example of the Jewish religion being used as a kind of a tool for political expediency. But then what would you then say about the existence or the rise of indeed a Jewish far-right extremist clique, or indeed one would argue a sect? You know, people like, for example, Rabbi Yitzhak Ginsburg. He's, for example, made the point, I think in the 90s, he's written about the kind of historical entitlement that Jews have to the whole land of Palestine. I mean, the whole land of Israel. You know, his idea about the Jewish control of that land has obviously, you know, cemented the idea for some kind of popularity within, you know, the West Bank settlements, you know, which they call Judea and Samaria. But these people like him and many others, you know, Meir Kahane and all these individuals, where would you put them in the spectrum? Would you categorize them as aberrations of Orthodox Judaism, as kind of you know, extremists, or the ISIS variety of Judaism? How would you categorize these religious figures?
Well, certainly I will say so. I will say that they are the far extreme radical segment of the religious Jewish people. It doesn't mean that I'm going to judge each individual. So many people unfortunately don't know any better. They were so indoctrinated into their approach by others, again. But regardless whether we can judge the individual, this movement is in no way representing Judaism. And you know, whoever just looks on what is happening, justifying, like even if they would have some claim to the land, would that mean that everybody standing in their way should be annihilated and exterminated and killing everyone? Now, how in the world can one tolerate that? It doesn't make any sense. And just misusing verses, misusing concepts, misusing text to justify a political movement is not only unjust, it's criminal. Basically, it's criminal not only against the people it's oppressing, it's criminal against the entity they are misrepresenting, because they are misrepresenting the Jewish people and misrepresenting the Jewish religion. This is an embarrassment to our people and a desecration of God's name.
Can I just add something, if you don't mind, Yusuf? Rabbi,
sure.
You mentioned something very profound, and it really hit me to the core, because we have the same kind of verse in the Quran in Surah Ma'idah 5:32, and this verse is actually addressed to the children of Israel. Whoever kills an individual without any justice is like killing all of mankind. Whoever saves one life is like saving all of mankind. And this is in Surah Ma'idah in 5:32. And it actually is, we decreed upon the children of Israel that whoever saves one life is like saving the whole of mankind. And whoever kills one person without unjust cause is like killing all of mankind. And like the verse that you mentioned really kind of like mirrors the verse that we have in our scripture. So we are on the same page as you are. Sorry, Yusuf, I just wanted to add that because I really kind of like was a profound verse that the Rabbi mentioned. So guys, go ahead.
It says in Judaism, Whoever saves one life is like saving the entire world.
Yeah, it mirrors exactly what you've got there. The Quranic, in fact, that's what the Quran states, that it was ordained, God ordained to the children of Israel, and you've got parallels of that within your particular scriptures, and indeed the Talmudic literature itself. And that takes me to the point, the kind of systematic massacre, the clear genocide that we've been seeing, the fact that there's this brazen lack of care and concern, the callousness that has been employed by a lot of these Israelis in killing, in exterminating Palestinians and Palestinian children. I mean, where does this kind of where does this lack of ethic, this lack of humanity come from? Because it kind of parallels to a large extent what was happening in Nazi Germany. And I mean, some people have even made the argument that some of the earliest Zionist terrorist death squads like Irgun, like Haganah, the Stern Group, the Stern Gang, all of these were the forerunners to eventually the IDF. A lot of them, in fact, indeed had, to a certain extent, links with Nazi Germany. I think I saw it's Nur Rabbani, one of the writers, or Nur Masalha, made the particular point that a lot of these death squads that were created in the formative years leading up to the eventual bombing into existence of the state of Israel in 1948 had, to a certain extent, links with Nazi Germany. And you see the kind of same behavior that was enacted by Nazi Germany during the eventual Holocaust in the Second World War. That kind of attitude, that behavior, that kind of callous disregard for life, the policy of starvation of an entire population, that seems to be kind of an incarnation of what Nazi Germany did in the Second World War. Ideologically, it seems to me then that Israel is a kind of an illegitimate bastard child of basically the British, and indeed in terms of its practicalities, it's fulfilling what Nazi Germany did in the Second World War, at least at a very initial level.
Now, to explain how these people get to this far extreme level, it's a very good question. Basically, what we say is that when people leave God, when people go away from God, unfortunately, they are losing their morals as well. These people dropped God and his religion, and unfortunately, look how far, unfortunately, they went. But I might explain this a bit just for people to understand a little bit what's going on. I'll explain this with a story. I was once on a plane. I was on a plane from London to New York. And I come into the plane and I sit down on my aisle seat, and there is another gentleman sitting at the window seat. I say hello. I sit down. There is an empty seat between us, and I fall asleep. I wake up a couple hours later, and suddenly we end up in a conversation. Oh no, it started by there was a Haaretz newspaper on the seat between us, and I realized who my neighbor is. He's obviously a Zionist. And then we went into a nice conversation. I tried to explain him what we have to say in accordance to Zionism, and how contrary Zionism is to Judaism, how inhumane it is towards the Palestinian people, how criminal and how anti-Jewish it is. And then he goes by saying, regardless whether you are right or wrong, which is an achievement, isn't it? Regardless whether you are right or wrong, I'm never going to give it up. And I told him, I'll explain you. I know exactly where you come from. And what I said is as follows. There's a great difference between me, a religious, observant Jewish person, and you, with all due respect, a secular Jew. Because all what makes me Jewish, all what defines me Jewish, as I explained before, is the practice of my religion. That's all that makes me Jewish, regardless where I live. Versus you, all what makes you Jewish is only your Jewish nationalism. Because you have no connection to the religion. Now, if this Jewish nationalism comes under question mark, then what happens at that point is that your Jewish identity goes under a question mark, which is a true tragedy. And I understand exactly where you come from, because you cannot tolerate to give up your Jewish identity, and you shouldn't. A Jewish person should never give up their Jewish identity. But this tragedy doesn't happen today when we discuss an issue and we come up with some questions that question the national movement you identify with. This tragedy happened 100 years ago when Theodor Herzl came and started the movement of Zionism and transformed, or attempted to transform Judaism from a religion to a nationalism. At that point, they have destroyed the true Jewish identity and replaced it with something criminal and something anti-Jewish. Now, why I'm telling you this story is because sometimes we have to understand where these people come from. Some of these people, and forgive me for saying this, I believe that some of these people are innocent. They don't know any better, and they struggle within themselves with this identity crisis. They have a real problem with their identity. And it's very difficult for people to overcome this, especially non-religious Jewish people. They struggle to overcome this because they're almost left without anything. But again, this doesn't justify anything. And again, I'm not explaining, I'm not answering the question what you asked, how to explain how far these people go, because there is no explanation. Unfortunately, this is evil to the core, and there is no way to justify this other than just raising massive propaganda and to drive people crazy and to have people just blindly support Israel without thinking, without analyzing anything what is taking place.
Just on the interesting point that you made, and I want to kind of pick your brains on that particular issue, is I understand that modern Jewish religious tradition, at least from the Israeli point of view, may not make this particular distinction. But does the Torah, as I understand on my reading of it, particularly the Pentateuch, does it, from your perspective, make a distinction, and certainly applying it in the modern context, between a religious, national, racial, or ethnic identity? Because, the problem that I seem to be having is that whenever, for example, when Netanyahu describes himself, or extremists like Bezalel Smotrich, or the far-right fanatic terrorist Itamar Ben-Gvir, they describe themselves as Jewish, but not just in religious terms, but also racial terms. But would I be correct, Rabbi, that being a Jew is not a racial definition? It's a religious definition. It's not a national ethnic definition. If you look at the writings of Arthur Koestler and so on, you had the Khazarians converting to Judaism, but they were Caucasians. Would I be correct that distinction should be there, but in the Israeli context, it doesn't seem to exist?
You are exactly right. And as I said in the beginning, all what Judaism is about a religion. There is a quote from Rabbi Sadi Gon, one of the very great Jewish scholars going back hundreds of years ago, and he said, "Ein emusaini imo elo b'Torah." Our people are a people only by the Torah they follow. This is all what makes us Jewish. Yes, there is a concept, and we have to be careful here how to present this. There is a concept that if one was born from a Jewish mother, they are automatically required to follow Judaism. But that's not the definition of a Jew. The race is not making the person a Jew. It happens to be that the Maimonides, who was one of the greatest scholars in Jewish history, he writes that if a Jewish person lacks the belief in one out of the 13 basics of Jewish belief, that individual is no longer considered part of the Jewish people, which doesn't mean that he's not required to repent. Yes, he's required to repent. To that extent, he's still Jewish. that God requires of him to be Jewish and to follow Judaism. But as long as he decided not to be part of Judaism, he's no longer part of the Jewish people.
Mm.
Now, again, as you said, Judaism is not a race. Judaism is a religion. And the Jewish person is the person following the Jewish religion. And what happened is, with this secular movement, dropping the religion in its entirety, or at least partially, they had to have a new definition of Judaism in order to justify their Jewishness. But this is a new definition, this is a new movement, and in no way can represent traditional Judaism, or what, I always say it's my grandparents and your grandparents, all Jews throughout all generations, disagreed with today's how the Zionist movement is presenting the Jewish people or the Jewish identity.
And that's really fascinating that you say this, because that core distinction is not known. I mean, you could theoretically have a Chinese Jew. I mean, you had within Palestine, during the British Mandate and during the Ottoman period, you had Arabs who were racially Arabs, but they were Jewish by religion. But today's society, unfortunately, even in mainstream secular press, they make the racial distinction between Palestinians and Jews, when in actual fact you had Palestinians, Jews existing. And then the point being made behind this is that it seems to me that you then the reality of the situation is that you had these atheistic ideologues, people like Weitzman, Hetzel, and all these characters, who were, originally they come from Jewish backgrounds, meaning their forefathers were practicing Jews, but for them, being Jewish was just simply part of their religious heritage, but they were not practicing Jews. They used Judaism, they used the Jewish religion, they used another religious term of kind of importance, Zion, Jerusalem, to coin the name of their movement, which they called Zionism. Just letting the train go by. What it appears to me, Rabbi, is that, and tell me if I'm correct, is that they consider the term appropriate for their secular political movement of Zionism, and then in fact appropriating even the Jewish term itself, the Jewish identity, as somehow the other inherently racial, as a basis for creating this kind of settler colonial occupation. Because a lot of them were Europeans, but the aim of Zionism was the basis of creating these European colonial settler movement to live in a land which was anciently occupied by the Israelites. And the only way to justify it was that they appropriate religious terminology for that particular purpose.
And right. But again, look what they are doing is they're misusing a religion or religious concepts to justify, first of all, a secular movement, which should never be the case. But it's basically justifying the actual violation of that very religion they are misusing.
How would you define Israel, the modern state of Israel? I'm not talking about ancient Israel concept, but the modern secular nation state of Israel. How would you define it in one word?
A heretic, criminal, non-Jewish movement, anti-Jewish movement. And when I say anti-Jewish, I mean anti the religion and anti the people. And this is a discussion for itself to explain how bad and catastrophic the movement of Zionism is, not only to the Jewish religion, but to the people.
So from a moral point of view, then, in terms of, for example, claiming some degree of legitimacy in terms of land justification, would you then say that someone who is European or American, albeit considering himself or labeling himself Jewish, he may be a practicing Jew or he may not be a practicing Jew, would you say in either situation, would they have a moral claim to a particular land, to land in Israel, or would their very presence in the land of what was Palestine or what they now call Israel, would their very presence in itself from a religious point of view be illegitimate?
If the question is religiously, no, they have no claim whatsoever. If they want to live in Palestine, as Jewish people did, individual Jewish people lived in Palestine for hundreds of years. If they want to live there, they should take permission from the people living there, from the governments ruling in the land. And if they get the permission, that's fine. And if the people want to immigrate to the United States of America and they take permission from the American government, that's perfect. And if they want to immigrate to Morocco, that's fine if they get the proper permission. But having a religious claim to the land because they are Jewish, even if they are practicing Jews, and because they are practicing Jews according to that religion they practice, they have no religious claim to it.
I think that's one answer, but I think also another point is that what I mean is more particularly as an ethno state, that has absolutely no religious justification. I mean, even from a moral point of view, it would be illegitimate. Would you agree with me? As an ethno state ruled by Jews itself, or people who claim to be Jews, albeit they may be atheists or religious for that particular matter, but they would have no moral claim to that. Would I be correct?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by asking a moral claim. Now, you cannot have a
moral claim in the sense that firstly, the establishment of that created a refugee crisis and led to the ethnic cleansing of about 900,000 indigenous Palestinians. And of course, the creation of the state was basically illegitimately. We had the UN partition plan, of course, the formation of the 1948 borders didn't even go according to that. They took more than what the UN partition plan basically claimed. But I'm saying, leave aside the religion on the one hand. We understand from a religious point of view there's a level of illegitimacy, but from a moral standpoint, in terms of the existence of a nation state, even in a secular sense, would you make the argument that this would be wrongly constituted, that in itself it should be disbanded, that the state of Israel should be disbanded as a secular nation state?
Well, certainly, because this was founded on the account of the indigenous population. So many people were killed and so many people were displaced, and this was intentionally done from the very beginning. This was wrong from the very beginning, and there's no way to justify it. No, this was wrong in the beginning. This has to stop. If we wake up today and we are willing to admit that all crimes that were done is wrong, then we should simply stop all of this. If we want to act moral, then we should be moral people, and Jewish people should act moral, and this is a requirement of a Jewish person. And all of this should stop. There is no moral justification for all of this. Now, let me say, yes, Jewish people went through a very difficult experience at the Holocaust. It was my grandparents, the grandparents of my communities, and the stories in each and every corner where you go amongst our communities, they would have stories from the Holocaust. Yes, Jewish people were desperate at the time, and Jewish people needed a place where to live. But God forbid, on the account of other people, to oppress other people because we were oppressed. And I say this all the time. On the contrary, it's because we know what suffering is. It's because we feel what this pain is all about. We don't want and we shouldn't want to see this happen to anyone. And especially we shouldn't be those committing these crimes. This is ridiculous. There's no way to justify this.
What is it, Rabbi, about the state of Israel, or rather, if I could call it Israeli Hasbara, that has for decades, until of course recently, and I believe that there has been a shift in global media, but what is it about the Israeli secular nation state that has been so successful in being able to portray its settler colonial occupation as a kind of a struggle between Jews and Arabs, and at the same time it's enabled it to weaponize and politicize anti-Semitism when justifying its human rights abuses, war crimes, and its crimes against humanity? How come it's been so successful?
I think that you answered the question in the very beginning of your words. You said the Hasbara. this massive propaganda machine, which has the microphone already for decades, and at least until not too long ago, they had the sole only microphone, and all what was heard was only the Zionist voice, and then they come with their their version of the story, and the Palestinians never existed. Even today, it's a little bit difficult to believe this, but at least for decades they came with this argument. And then what you're saying, the anti-Semitism accusation, they say that the Arabs hate us and they want to drive us into the sea, and they play on the emotions of the people. And I experience this. I see this amongst Jewish people who don't believe in Zionism, people who are against the Zionist movement. Some of them are still influenced by the fear that the Palestinians want the harm of the Jewish people, which doesn't make any sense, doesn't have no basis to it, and it's pure propaganda. But I have to say that when you're talking about the anti-Semitism accusation and silencing whoever speaks up against these crimes against the movement of Zionism as being anti-Semitic, and we say this always, and especially in the last couple of weeks since this student movement on college campuses, silencing the voice of Palestine, silencing the voice of justice with the accusation of anti-Semitism is not only doing injustice to the students on campus who deserve the freedom of speech. It's not only doing injustice for the oppressed people of Palestine who deserve our voice to speak up for them and to stop the oppression they are going through. This is doing injustice to the Jewish people as well, because when you conflate Judaism with Zionism, when you conflate anti-Zionism with anti-Judaism, you're making a statement. You're making a statement that all Jews, God forbid, support the movement of Zionism or the crimes that Israel perpetrates. And that is basically making a statement that all Jews are accountable to all these crimes. And this is dangerous for Jewish people as well, in addition to all Nakba catastrophe inflicted on the Palestinian people. And it's not only this anti-Semitism accusation, it's basically all what Israel stands for in acting as Netanyahu insists that you call it the Jewish state. He insists that he represents all Jews. Now, by doing that, he insists that all Jews paid the price or face the hatred and the danger that some people from Jewish descent do. And that is dangerous for the Jewish people, in addition to so much calamities and so much catastrophe done to the Palestinian people. And therefore, this is one of the reasons why we say that the state of Israel is dangerous for the Jewish people. And we don't need a state of Israel to protect us, because we can live in Palestine, we can live in each and every Muslim country as we lived before all of this started. We can live in peace, we can be protected as we were protected and respected. We don't want a state of Israel to endanger everyone involved. We have to remember the state of Israel is not only a danger for Palestine, it's a danger for everyone involved, including the Jewish people. Whoever stands up against the movement of Zionism would be attacked, intimidated, tortured, and killed, regardless whether they are Palestinians, Arabs, or Jews.
I think it's fascinating you make that point, and particularly with anti-Semitism. And I may just add one thing, that, even Arthur Balfour, the founder of the Balfour Declaration, was in his earlier years a notorious anti-Semite. You had that a lot of anti-Semites initially were in favor of the creation of the State of Israel, particularly in Britain, because it would lead to the expulsion of Jews to their own particular land. So it very in a bizarre kind of way, anti-Semitism mirrors the ideology of Zionism. They play off each other, and that Zionism would not exist without the existence of anti-Semitism. And it's the irony of ironies that Jews were welcomed in Muslim countries prior, and anti-Semitism was essentially a European colonial problem, a problem amongst the Germans, the British. Muslims and Jews always lived side by side. I mean, historically, the the Renaissance of the heights of Jewish Renaissance was in Muslim Spain, and not during the reign of Christianity, as an example.
Right. It's important to note that Theodor Herzl, the founder of Zionism, wrote in his diary that he needs anti-Semitism in order to be successful. And the Zionist movement did spread anti-Semitism in European countries to make Jewish people uncomfortable and to have them escape and immigrate to their new supposed so-called Jewish state.
I just want to ask you one thing, and of course it may be controversial, but and as speakers and both myself, Brother Mohammed, we condemn any kind of attack on anyone, whether it's Jews, Muslims, or Christians. But the common argument has been in relation to the Palestinian resistance and indeed Hamas that it's particularly its military wing, that its whole goal and its whole aim is just extermination of Jews per se. But as I understand, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, that Rabbi Weiss, and I'm not so sure whether yourself, you've met, would I be correct? You've met with the Hamas leadership, am I correct? In 2009, 2010?
Yes.
Did you in any way, I believe you met with the leader of Hamas, Ismail, did you in any way find him to be anti-Semitic or anti-Jewish on a personal level?
To begin with, I have to say that I'm not a lawyer of any group, and I'm not here to present, to advocate any group, regardless of which side they are. But it happens to be to the question that you're asking. Hamas, in our personal experience, and I say this in public, and I say this to the Jewish people, they have nothing against the Jewish people. And here's the quote that Ismail Haniyeh said to us in a private meeting. And right afterwards, in a public press conference, CNN from the United States was present, and they didn't air it. And he said, "We are not against the Jewish people. We have nothing against the Jewish people, neither against the Jewish religion. We are against the occupation." Saying that these people are anti-Semitic is purely Zionist propaganda, because the movement of Zionism has no answer to the points that these people are raising. The only answer they have is this false anti-Semitism accusation, to accuse whoever speaks up against Israel, whoever does anything, or whoever says anything against Israel, that the only thing they want is against Jews. This whole conflict which is going on has nothing to do with the Jewish people. On the contrary, if the Zionists insist that they represent all Jews, and they do enough propaganda that people should believe them. Now listen to this. That actually directs people to hate all Jews, because those people originally have nothing against the people, the Jewish people. They are against the crimes being committed by some people from Jewish descent. But if you confuse the issues, if you insist that all Jews are on the same page and all Jews support all what Israel is doing, then sadly, obviously, people will hate all Jews. And this is one of the points that we are fighting so strongly against, that we refuse to allow all Jewish people to be misrepresented by the Zionist movement, and we refuse to allow the Jewish religion to be misrepresented by the Zionist movement.
I understand, Rabbi, that your time is limited, and so I'm going to wrap this up. But I just want to ask your comments on the recent arrest warrants that we haven't had time to discuss. But your thoughts on the arrest warrants issued, or at least applied by Karim Khan at the International Criminal Court. Do you think it'll see any kind of fruition? Because in all probability, I mean, the United States has given its indication. Matthew Miller, the spokesperson, Admiral John Kirby, they've all condemned the ICC. It seems that that the ICC or the International Court of Justice is only applicable to tin pot dictators in Africa. But when it comes to people like Netanyahu, anyone that's an ally of the West, of American imperial power or American imperial ambition, then it's wrong, it's immoral. I mean, the same people who supported the arrest warrant against Vladimir Putin are now making the claim that the ICC has got no jurisdiction on Israel, but it had no jurisdiction on Russia, and yet they supported the claims. So it's this hypocrisy that you see manifest large by, I mean, these are really devious, evil people out there that do a disservice to both our religions and worldviews.
Now again, this blind support to Israel is sad and dangerous to all. Whether what's going to happen in the future, whether this is going to be successful, we can only hope that that justice will prevail. But regardless what is going to happen, what is a definite positive outcome of all of this is that the world is seeing what is going on. No wonder that people wake up in the last couple of months way more than before. People see what's happening. People see what's happening in Gaza. People see what's happening in The Hague. People see how Zionist propaganda is working, and which is showing for people how wrong all of this is. Now, this is only helping people overcome their past ignorance. How quick this is going to make effective change, nobody knows. We hope that things will move much quicker than it does. But, you know, it's the duty of each and every righteous person on planet Earth to do everything they can for God, for humanity, and especially for the oppressed people.
Well, I want to thank you for that, Rabbi. It's been a privilege having you. I want to thank I'm just getting the train pass through. I see you in a pretty busy, but I like the side of the train. I want to thank you for your contributions, and I want to thank your voice that is giving spirit to the voiceless and the oppressed out there. Brother Mohammed, any final parting words to the good Rabbi? Because
I just want to say, yeah, absolutely, Rabbi. It's been an honor having you. The audience have loved you. I have really enjoyed your company, and I'm hoping that we can continue maybe this communication with us, and maybe hopefully we can do something off stage right now. Contact each other on a regular basis. We need to get this voice out, and this is when I did the monologue at the beginning of the show, brothers and sisters. We need to get this message out. This is being smothered by the main media outlets. We need to show this to the world, that Muslims and Jews and Christians can live in harmony and in peace. And the Rabbi is a beautiful example of that. And I really hope you guys in the chat have enjoyed it. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to the show. That's the only plug I'm going to say, Brother Yusuf. But Rabbi, it's been an honor having you. I've really enjoyed this discussion, and it's been a pleasure. Really has. Thank you, Brother Yusuf, and Rabbi. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rabbi. And we support you in I believe you're going to a
Thank
university.
You very much. It was a
college
pleasure to be with you.
Thank you very much. You take care.
Sure. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure being with you.
No,
Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. Wow. I think the Rabbi is going to shoot off. I think he's got a protest or a march to go to. So, guys, please follow the Rabbi. I don't know if he's got any social media outlets like X or anything like that. Please check out the Rabbi. It's been amazing, brothers and sisters.
You can check out the website, www.nkusa.org.
If you want to put it into the private chat, and I can then put it onto the main screen, and then that way people can click onto you.
Excuse me again?
So if you put it into the private chat, if you want to, and I can cut and paste it and then put it onto the main, I can then put it onto the main screen. Does that help?
I will send the link. It's www.netrakarta.
It's N as in Nancy, NKUSA. And then you have links to the social media platforms.
Yeah, got it. Awesome. Copy. Yeah. Fantastic.
Great. Anyway, thank you, Rabbi. Thank you very much, and you take care. And that's the website to get to for those who are interested in going there. Till then.
See you soon. Thank you so much.
See you soon. Thank you very much.
Sure, bye.
Bye-bye.
I'm just going to remove the Rabbi because I know he's got to shoot
that's
off. But yeah, once again, amazing. I really appreciate his company and his insight. Yeah, his knowledge is amazing. I really appreciate it. So I'm going to remove him now. But nevertheless, myself and Brother Yusuf are here. We really are calling out to everybody in the chat and everybody who will watch this in the future to like and subscribe to the channels, because I really feel that a certain YouTube channel